Good morning again. All right, it's about, let's see, it's about an hour and a half since I did the last video, I guess. That was about 7 in the morning, 6:30, whatever. And I've been busy. I'm up and at 'em. And what I wanted to do now is I wanted to take you through some of the process to start your novel or screenplay, okay? So at this point, I'm assuming that you have some idea what you want to write about, all right? You've got maybe a working title. And, maybe a couple of characters based on people you know a little bit. Maybe a theme, whether it's, a journey of faith or a romance, themes about here, and what we all go through. Think of something like Thelma and Louise, one of my favorite all-time films. What's the theme of that? Strong women? Betrayal? Rape? Murder, you can use words to start to define your theme. Just simple words. All right, now, in my last little video, I talked a bit about plans as part of your screenplay development. Plans, as I said, are sort of a subset of structure. And so what I've done is I've pulled this up. Now, I did this a long time ago. And that, if you can see, is King's Speech. All right? And I tracked the whole bloody thing. Now, as I said, plan zero, okay? In other words, he's scared. He had a speech, if you remember, and he stuttered, okay? And he was embarrassed and angry at himself. So plan zero, he comes up with a plan. He's pulled by his wife to see an idiotic therapist, and it doesn't work. And that's when he puts marbles in his mouth. Bertie is so fearful and wanting to hide, he just can't do it. He can't do this anymore. So this is called a B story a little bit. Forceful pressure comes in. He makes light of possible new alternatives that she's found. So in other words, here you've got the would-be king, the future king, poo-pooing what might be long-term success where he won't stutter. He thinks at this point that he's going to stutter all of his life. A lot of people think that something that's awful about them, they're going to be stuck with it for the rest of their life, no matter how hard they work or what kind of therapists or doctors they see. And that's the starting point. That's usually your starting point. It's almost in a drama or a tragedy, whatnot. Sometimes you start with, we've lost everything. Where do we go? There's your plan of action. Plan zero is, I'm never going to solve it. Even if I try something, I'm not going to solve it. So that's what I did. And I probably broke down about, 10 to 20 films like this. See, there's Plan C. See, this is it. He faces down. This is where everything comes through. So you've got Plan zero, and then Plan A, that starts to move. Plan B, which is Act 2. Bertie, you see, so I learned so much by doing this. It was great. All right. So that's how you start to structure things. But first, you got to learn more about your characters. And we talked about backstories the other day. And I just wanted to pull this up. Now, this is when I was writing the Dolphin Song screenplay. And this was written in August 2016. What's that? 6 years ago? 7? 6.5. All right. So I mentioned that I wrote stuff about all the main characters and the smaller characters, the smaller players in it. So here are the main players. There's Dawn, and that tells you what's going on. Okay, that's what she's experiencing. There's Michael, her husband. All right. There's Jason, their son. Margaret, that's the mother, Dawn's mother-in-law's. Jackie, that's Michael's best friend in Ireland. And then all the other players. It took me forever to develop just these guys. I've gotten better at it, but it takes a long time, All right. Now, that's that. Let's see what else. I'm only going to show you a couple more things. All right. Now, let's say you start to figure out what's going on. All right. Even before you start writing a word of your novel or screenplay, you've got more work to do. All right? And what I did, remember I talked about a log line, which is a log line in a screenplay should be 25 words long. This was my working log line, but this is the story. I had it. I would have to pare that down, and I did, to 25 words or less to pitch this to a producer or an agent, okay? But this was my working one. And what I would often do is print this thing out, and I would tape it up here someplace. I used to have a whiteboard here, and I used to tape a piece of paper right there. I wanted to tack it to my forehead, and I wanted to say, you know, if I was writing away and I got lost at all, if I was doubtful, I'd go back to the log line or the premise. A premise, as I said, is about 5 or 6 or 7 paragraphs long for a novel. And that's one of the maps. And that is the target. That's where you're going, is that log line or premise. And that's why I printed out. I needed it, you know? Keeps me honest as a writer. All right, so I've got the log line. Now the fun begins. This is probably the 20th draft of a synopsis for the screenplay. All right? Now, this is a long synopsis. Often synopsis can only be 500 words. Depends on what you're using it for. This was for me. This wasn't for submission to anybody. And this is like a very, very short story or a letter to myself. All right? And this started to outline the entire story. I'll get rid of that. And last one. Now the fun begins. You take that little tiny synopsis and you start to blow it up. And in film, what you have to write for a lot of submissions is what's called a treatment. And this is a short story. All right? And now I've done sequence 1, so that's the first sequence of the screenplay. And I'm not sure if I continued through with it, but look, this thing is 39 pages long. Now, I see the sequence 3, see, they're there. And as I got better at writing these things, what I did, and I didn't pull up an example, is for each chapter, if I'm writing a novel, or for each scene or sequence, if I'm writing a screenplay, what I do is for a screenplay, I'd say, okay, the location is out there on in the Atlantic, and it's day, and there's a storm coming, and then I'd say, okay, what is the character arc in this little sequence? What's a character arc? It's what they learn. Do they learn something? Dawn learns to take a leap of faith. That's what she has to learn to find her husband, to her dead husband. So I put, okay, a little subset. Dawn doubts that they're going to survive this gale that's coming. All right, so that questions her faith. All right, she believes in God. She even forgets to pray. She's so frightened. She's worried about her husband and, more importantly, her son. So I do that. And then I write, where does the scene start and where does it end? So it starts as the storm is approaching, and it ends when the gale is upon them, all right, when the boat starts to rock. That's the scene. And then I'd write about 1 paragraph or 2 or 3 of what happens in that scene and maybe a little tiny bit of dialogue. And I do the same thing in a chapter breakdown for a novel. And there's your lesson today, 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Take care of yourselves. More later. God bless. Bye-bye.